Good morning. I'm Kelly Simoneau, Director of the Howard County Department of Housing and Community Development. I would like to welcome you to the announcement regarding the new Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. I would like to take a moment to recognize the elected officials joining us today. Senator Lamb, Delegate Fellmark, Jessica Cook from Senator Cardin's office, Jessica Clayton from Senator Van Hollen's office, Felix Vachine from District 3, and China Williams from District 4. Please join me now in welcoming County Executive Ball to the podium.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you all for being here. Let me just say publicly again how much we greatly appreciate the hard work of Kelly Simoneau and her team. These are quite intractable issues, and we're seeing them throughout the county, the state, and the nation, and Kelly and her team always work so hard. When I took office, one of my top priorities was to address the growing concern in our community around the lack of sufficient housing opportunities across the income spectrum. As you can see on the timeline, we've made a sustained effort to address housing affordability right here in Howard County, which started with launching the Housing Opportunities Master Plan Task Force in October of 2019. Due to the many factors that make Howard County a desirable place to live, work, play, and grow, our current housing supply is expensive, especially when compared to our neighbors, and we have not been able to meet the demand from individuals and families. Currently, approximately 9% of housing in Howard County is affordable to households making less than 60% of the area median income, which for a household of 4 is about $72,000 a year. For so many families who want to call Howard County home, purchasing or renting is just out of reach. Today, we're taking a significant leap to make Howard County affordable and accessible to all with our Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. This $5 million fund will allow our Department of Housing and Community Development to increase affordability for our low-income households, assist renters and first-time home buyers, and develop, preserve, and rehab affordable housing throughout Howard County. With this Housing Opportunities Trust Fund, we now have a financial tool to implement our Housing Opportunities Master Plan, the first completed in more than a decade. Our master plan provides a clear strategy to improve access to housing and guide housing-related decisions for the next 5 to 10 years. The master plan identifies 3 overarching strategies Howard County can employ to improve housing opportunities, including revising our land use, planning, and zoning regulations to improve availability, accessibility, affordability, and diversity in our housing stock. Supporting housing stability through the improvement of existing policies and programs and creations of new and innovative ones. And addressing both housing and infrastructure needs in Howard County to ensure that neither form of demand eclipses the other. With the trust fund, we can now make progress on our shared goals. We will create more opportunities for home ownership in Howard County by investing in programs that assist with down payments through the Settlement Down Payment Loan Program, placing more residents in moderate income housing units, expanding home buyer education classes, and helping income restricted residents purchase renter occupied for sale units. We will also continue our investments in rental assistance because we know that a majority of low-income renters are spending more than 30% of their incomes on their housing. To support our renters, we can invest in rental subsidies, making more rental units affordable for severely rent-burdened seniors and our neighbors with disabilities. Our Housing Opportunities Master Plan also identified many of our more affordable homes are much older. So we will invest in rehab assistance by providing flexible loans and grants to support modifications, rehabilitations, improvements, accessibility, and energy upgrades. This will allow our homeowners to adapt, modernize, and improve their homes, supporting the long-term neighborhood investments for current and future residents. Finally, we're continuing our investment in developments that serve our populations in need. A perfect example of this is our Patuxent Commons. Of its planned 76 units, 19 will be for our people of disabilities, 30 for older adults, and 27 for families. Developments like Patuxent Commons not only improve housing opportunities, but also support the inclusive and diverse community that Howard County is known for. All of these initiatives would not be possible without the dedication and hard work of our Housing Opportunities Task Force and the important creation and investment of our Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. I'd like to thank our state delegation, including Jessica Feldmark, delegate, and Clarence Lamb, senator, who are here, as well as our entire delegation for championing this issue at the State House and helping us secure the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund finally. We know that living in a diverse community with a full spectrum of housing affordability and opportunity benefits all of us. And we will help build a community that reflects not just our diversity, but our values of inclusivity. It is so critical that we work to ensure accessible and affordable housing for all of our residents and ensure forward progress continues today and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ball, for your leadership and perseverance to provide funding and make this trust fund a reality. Please join me in welcoming Senator Lamb, Chair of the delegation, to the podium.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here on this beautiful morning and with all the sound before us, because that's the sound of progress. So we're really pleased to be able to be here. So I'm Clarence Lamb, speaking on behalf of the Howard County delegation. Really pleased to be able to support this initiative and all of the efforts that took place to be able to be here this morning. I've always been a firm believer that people should be able to live in the community that they serve and that they work in. And increasingly, for many individuals who work here and play here and like to be here and enjoy our facilities, it is increasingly difficult for these individuals like firefighters, police officers, and teachers, and retail workers to be able to live here. Who lives here reflects who we are, and it reflects our values as our community. And if we hope to continue to be a diverse and inclusive community, it's important for us to also ensure that there's inclusivity and diversity of those who are able to live here as well. And that's why it's so important for this to be reflected in our housing policies. Delegate Feldmark will be up in a few moments to be able to speak about legislation that we as a delegation supported and passed this session, but there are also other pieces of legislation that the state legislature enacted to also support affordable housing in our community and throughout the state. This past session, we passed legislation that allowed facilities that the state has designated to be surplus to be reviewed by the Department of Housing and Community Development so that they can be designated or developed for affordable housing. We also put in $30 million more into the state's budget for the Rental Housing Fund. And finally, we passed legislation to strengthen eviction protections to make sure that tenants are properly protected, that they have the right to counsel, as well as the funds to be able to afford that, and to have the Department of Housing and Community Development collect more robust data on evictions in the state so that we can monitor and take necessary actions in the future. And we also, as a delegation, want to thank Delegate Feldmark for her leadership on affordable housing. We know this issue has been near and dear to her. And as the initial sponsor of this legislation that the delegation was able to support, we want to thank her as well. And also to the county executive for bringing together this master plan, which was long overdue. Through a lot of effort and leadership on his part, we're able to pull this together, as well as through our partners in the county council as well. So with that, on behalf of the delegation, we are really pleased to support this, and we want to thank all of you for being here, and the county executive and our local leaders as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lamb, for your commitment and support of the county's housing initiatives. At this time, I would like to invite Delegate Feldmark to share some remarks.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you all for being here. Good morning. I want to thank everyone who's here today, and I want to thank everyone who helped us get here. Thank you to the members of the Housing Opportunities Task Force for their work creating the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. To all the advocates who've been championing the implementation of the plan's recommendations. To my colleagues in the state delegation and the General Assembly who helped us pass the state legislation not only for the trust fund, but also the other bills that Senator Lamb spoke about. Importantly, thank you to the county executive for putting this funding in the budget. Funds work better when there are actual funds in them. So, so thank you. And of course, thank you to the County Council for approving the county executive's budget. It was a little bit over a year ago that we gathered not far from here to celebrate the release of the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. And before I even left that press conference, at least 3 of the advocates, I was trying to remember how many, I couldn't remember for sure, but I can remember at least 3 of the advocates, who may all be here today, approached me about what was going to be needed in terms of state legislation to make these recommendations work. And of course, that started the conversation about the state legislation for the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. So the fund provides a formal, coordinated, and predictable structure for allocating housing funding. And the state legislation that we passed was critical to ensuring that the fund would be a non-lapsing fund. I'm proud to have sponsored this bill, grateful for my colleagues on the delegation and in the General Assembly who supported it. And our legislation was the critical first step. As I mentioned, actually putting funds in the fund was the critical second step. So thank you, Mr. Executive. And of course, then the council had to approve that initial funding. That initial funding, I want you to notice that initial funding. I'm working really hard. My written notes were very clear. I may accidentally at some point say the fund was funded, but that makes it sound like we're done, and we're not, right? This is the initial funding. So we know that it's an ongoing process, and there is much more work to do. So I believe I said thank you to the County Council for approving the funding, and I really want to thank the advocates who worked to make sure that council approval came through. Anyone who is following this process closely knows that the council funding was at risk. This funding was on the chopping block right up until the 11th hour with an amendment filed to cut it. But our advocates were working in high gear, and we had lots and lots of constituents reach out, folks from the Association of Community Services, the Affordable Housing Coalition, people acting together in Howard, constituents reaching out to their representatives to say, this is important to me, this is important to our community, and we're watching. So, thankfully, we did get over that milestone, and the council did approve the funding. So a huge thank you to all the advocates who pushed that piece of this process across the finish line. And of course, the finish line for that funding was just one milestone along the way. As much as this is a huge success, as much as this is a reason to celebrate, it is one piece in a complex puzzle. It is one step in a long journey, right? Choose your favorite metaphor. The point is there's a lot more work to do. And so when we think about affordable housing policy, to me, it's a chance to reflect on some really key questions, right? What kind of community do we want to be? Do we actually mean it? Right? It's easy to support affordable housing in concept. It's easy to say the right things, but do we actually mean it? And are we willing to do it? Are we willing to do it consistently because it's the right thing to do? Or are we only doing it reluctantly because it seems to be politically expedient at the moment? We need real leadership. If inclusion is a core value of ours, we need to be willing to do the work. It has to be more than a soundbite or a bullet point on a postcard. We need to be willing to do the work, even when it doesn't seem to be politically expedient. And so as much as today is a day of celebration and thanks, I also think it's an important time to challenge each other and recommit to the work that lies before us. So thank you for getting us this far. Thank you in advance for your continued commitment. And let's work together to solve the rest of this complex puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Feldmark. We sincerely appreciate your efforts in drafting the trust fund legislation and shepherding it through the state legislative process. We are grateful for our partnership with you on important issues like this one. During the development of the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, many community members, including faith-based organizations, supported the work of the Housing Master Plan and helped gather feedback from the public. I would like to ask Reverend Tyrone Jones, representing PATH, to share his thoughts at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Truly, this is a joyous occasion in which we've gathered here today to celebrate the fact that, as Delegate Feldmark has said, the initial funding for people who are in desperate need of housing here in Howard County. PATH serves as a community organization, a power community organization that keeps our ears to the ground to make sure that we are hearing the needs of the constituents here in Howard County. And it's one thing to identify the problem, but it's something else when we put teeth behind the problem and making sure that there's some resolution. And so today PATH comes. I serve as co-chair along with Reverend Mary Kay Canahan. PATH serves as an advocate for the people in Howard County, and we come here today to celebrate the initial step that has been taken here today. We're going to continue to keep our ear to the ground to make sure that we lift up to all of our elected officials the needs that people have here in Howard County. I want to thank all of our elected officials that are here. I want to thank our county executive, Dr. Ball, for pushing this, and for the county council for moving forward the legislation, and for all of our delegates and the like, making sure that this step moves forward. Today is a day of celebration. We stand here in solidarity with all of you, but the work continues. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Jones. As you can see, we are standing on the Housing Commission's project site of Ellicott Gardens 2. If you recall, we stood on the site right across the parking lot in 2019 when the county executive announced the establishment of the Housing Task Force. New affordable rental units will be available here in early 2023. I would like to ask Housing Commission Chair, Ms. Beth Homan, to come to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And really, I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today. I want to introduce one of our commissioners who joined us today, Bert Hash.
Thank you.
The Housing Commission, our mission is to provide affordable housing for low and moderate income families. And truly, that is why the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund has been an initiative that we supported from the very start. The trust fund is a significant, as Delegate Feldmark said, first investment and truly a life-changing tool to address the greater numbers of affordable housing units in Howard County. With the trust fund, Howard County can provide stable, affordable housing for families who want to live and work in Howard County. The Housing Commission appreciates that the trust fund will provide vitally important funding to allow for home construction, purchases, and improvements. And as a result, it will provide housing stability that will shape Howard County for generations to come. The Commission would like to extend its gratitude to the County Executive, Kelly, and the whole team, members of the Howard County State Delegation, Senator Lamb, Delegate Feldmark, the Howard County Council members, housing advocates, and the Housing Commission staff. I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Engel, right there. The fund, we understand, is truly a collaboration of everyone from every walk of life, and it's so vital for our future. And now, with a trust fund in place, it's a tangible and meaningful demonstration that Howard County values creating a community for everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to make today a reality.
At this time, I would like to invite Jackie Eng from the Housing Affordability Coalition to the podium.
Thank you, Kelly. Collectively, we did it! We are actually here celebrating the long overdue birth of the Howard County Housing Opportunities Trust Fund. I don't know if it was during his 1998 or his 2002 term, but my local housing historians tell me that the idea of a housing trust was first suggested during Jim Roby's time as county executive. But then the concept languished until the 2017 council-appointed Economic Opportunity and Prosperity Task Force Housing Committee included among its recommendations creation of a housing trust fund. That recommendation was endorsed in January 2019 as part of newly elected County Executive Ball's Transition Committee and was a priority of housing advocates during the development of the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. Housing advocates were pleased to see the trust fund recommendation as a part of the final master plan, which was accepted by Dr. Ball in April 2021. And finally, now in 2022, after a longer and more winding road that we advocates would have liked, we can celebrate both the creation of the trust fund, but also, to my knowledge, this is one of the first tangible master plan implementation actions. I'd be remiss if I didn't express the Coalition's sincere appreciation to the members of the Council's 2017 EOP Task Force who helped move the trust fund onto the county's policy agenda. We're grateful to you, Dr. Ball, and many in your administration, particularly Kelly Simoneau, Carl DiLorenzo, and Sam Sid, for providing a path forward for thoughtful and in-depth consideration of the value of a housing trust. You boldly, Dr. Ball, put $5 million into your proposed FY22 budget, which the County Council cut in half and put restrictions on release of even that funding. Not to be deterred, you worked with the state delegation to get the fund into county code, repropose the $5 million, and work with the County Council to get approval of that seed money necessary to get the fund up and running. Today, as we applaud our success, let's not forget that this is just the first step in what has been an arduous journey, as Delegate Feldmark pointed out. Director Simoneau, you've already drafted a viable framework for how the fund can be administered. The Coalition looks forward to working with you and your team as you address additional startup challenges, such as how to establish and prioritize annual and long-term goals, how to balance annual expenditures with investments that will yield future revenues, and how to provide both public input and accountability processes. And Dr. Ball, you'll not be surprised that we advocates will be back on your doorstep, reminding you that for the fund to fulfill its charge, it must be sustainable over the long term, and that means significantly more funding. But those are conversations for another day. Today, it's a privilege and a pleasure for the Coalition to share in this moment of collaborative success. It's not our hope, nor our dream. Rather, it is our expectation that 5, 10, 20 years from now, our community will have seen tangible evidence that the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund has proven its value. That value being measured by exponentially greater access to stable and safe housing for the very low, the low, and moderate income households in our community that are critical to ensuring an economically, socially, and culturally healthy Howard County. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jackie, and the department accepts the challenge. Since the pandemic began in March of 2020, the Housing Department has utilized federal, state, and local funding to help residents impacted by COVID to remain safely housed. We have worked with our network of nonprofit and community-based providers to provide much-needed rental assistance and foreclosure prevention funding and counseling. Rental and foreclosure assistance could be an eligible use of Housing Trust Fund dollars in the future and could be accessed if the county determines a continued need after other grant funds are exhausted. While no one wants to be in the situation of needing assistance, it is important for the county to offer help to those struggling to maintain their housing. At this time, please join me in welcoming Ms. Deborah Morehouse to the podium to share a few words about her pandemic-related experience and the support she received from Howard County.
So it's a blessing to be here, and I want to thank, of course, Juanita Kareem. I don't know how you got my name, but she said, come join us. And so I said, fine. I'm going to give you a real quick rundown. I was born in New York State, lived there 30 years. Left there as a single sole support mother of 2 kids, ready? At age sort of 20-ish, and went to Vermont for 10 years. Then I came here because I wanted to be here. But I also wanted to jumpstart a career and pay for college for those kids in Vermont. So even though I've lived here for 30 years, I feel that I've been all up and down the mid-Atlantic and have seen a lot, done a lot, and I have an MBA at this point. So this is a pregnant teen that grew up and loves life. I'm not a victim. I'm not used to receiving any help. I'm capable. So why would I need help? So I first met Calvin Ball as a person that worked on a couple of campaigns and knocked on doors. And I became really in love with Howard County. We are so fortunate here to have what we have. And not just because we had a program when I needed a program. This is a great place and deserves all of our attention, all of our commitment, and all the different councils and committees and legislative groups and everybody. I already know we pull together. It's great, and it's very important. So, but how did I hear about this, right? How did I hear about this? I'm walking with the cicadas, and I always talk to neighbors within 8 blocks of where I live, and I met a woman who runs Cash. And she is a person that started a nonprofit 20 years ago that helps low-income people in any financial way you can. And then I said, you're so smart. Are you a lawyer? She said, do you need a lawyer? I said, well, I fired 2 because I'm trying to save my house and they do nothing. And I am the one that always goes to the hearings and I'm the one that speaks up. So I got rid of the lawyers and I studied Montgomery County and Howard County, and I looked at Maryland mortgage law, and I actually became my own lawyer. I was spending 20 hours a week, no kidding, on law. And finally I go back to Robin McKinney, who is with Cash, and I said, do you know a lawyer? She gave me Philip Robinson. He is the head lawyer of the Consumer Law Center in absolutely Silver Spring. So I never go anywhere not prepared. I created so many documents during my 20 hours a week for 20 weeks. I sent him everything and I said, I realize you have a lot of people coming at you. Here's the work I've done. I got an appointment with him right away and he said, you've done everything I would have told you to do. You have filed all the right things. And I said, okay. And so I thought it was good and I got forbearances on my lovely mortgage. But I had a predatory lender. And I had $13,000 saved to start going again with my mortgage, and they wouldn't accept that. And they, oh my God, I think it was over $3,000 they wanted me to pay for 12 months, blah, blah. I said, that's not our original terms. We had 4 ways I could repay you. And I'm giving you half of what I owe you right now. And I want to put the rest into my regular mortgage payment. No way. Oh my God. Here we go. We get the Columbia Flyer. And because my family has always been north, most of my action has been north. So I didn't read all the school stuff all the time. Boy, am I different now. But I just want to say, I saw an article and it said, Calvin Ball heads up this new project where they're looking for homeowners with predatory lenders who are trying to get the hell out of their forbearance plans. So I called right away and got involved with a lot of people. And I also have to mention somebody by the name of Brooks Scoville. And Brooks works with Jen Teresa and Atterbury, Vanessa Atterbury. And I have never met Brooks, but I will tell you, we are best buds. And we spent a lot of time on this. And they directed me to Howard County housing person, Linda Phillips. These are people, they're not the upper, these are the people that do all the work. And they're up with me at 2 a.m. And Jen Teresa has said to me, you don't know how many times Brooks tells me she's called you or you've called her at 2 a.m. So I'm a result. I'm a result. Today I'm a result. I'm also a life coach, and I have lots of friends. And now I know you all are among them. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, for courageously sharing your story this morning. I remember hearing about the need for a housing trust fund when I became housing director in 2016. So it came as no surprise that one of the first recommendations from the task force was to create a housing trust fund. I would like to thank the task force members for working diligently throughout the pandemic to help facilitate this announcement today. And because of this administration's leadership, the Housing Trust Fund will provide access to new housing opportunities for residents in our community. This concludes our program today. There are refreshments on the table beside us, and there will be more news about the Housing Trust Fund in the months ahead, so stay tuned. Thank you for coming.